So in this lesson, we're going to look at the Munich Crisis over Czechoslovakia. Let's look first at Czechoslovakia. If you remember, it was created at the end of World War I out of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It did have, let's have a look at the map actually first. If you look at the map here, you can see Germany in red and Czechoslovakia to the east of Germany. Now the majority population of Czechoslovakia was Czechs and Slovaks, but there were 3 million German speakers living in Czechoslovakia in the western part here, next to the borders of Germany. These were called the Sudeten Germans. They were a minority, they were outnumbered by the Czechs and the Slovaks, and they lived mainly in this orange area you can see called the Sudetenland. Now, this man here, Konrad Henlein, he was leader of the Sudeten German Party, and he had a number of complaints. He was complaining that the Sudeten Germans were not being treated fairly by the majority Czech and Slovak government. The thing is, Konrad Henlein's Sudeten German Party was secretly funded by Adolf Hitler, and he had no reason to want the Sudeten German Party to come to a peaceful agreement with the government of Czechoslovakia. In fact, he said to Konrad Henlein, you should make impossible demands that the Czech government cannot accept. Well, why would they do that? Why would Konrad Henlein and the Sudeten German Party make demands that they knew that the Czechoslovak government would not accept? Well, because Hitler and Konrad Henlein wanted to make a crisis in Czechoslovakia, which would give Hitler an excuse to invade and take over the Sudetenland. So what did Britain and France do as this crisis mounted? Well, the guy on the right you can see here was Eduard Beneš, and he was the leader of Czechoslovakia. He could see what was happening, and he was worried that his country would lose the Sudetenland, which was the heart of the industry. Most of Czech industry was in this area. So he turned to Britain and France for help. And this is the response that he got. Chamberlain was the British Prime Minister at the time, and he pointed out that, well, they didn't really have a formal treaty with Czechoslovakia, which would force them to help. And realistically, the armed forces of Britain, they didn't feel they were ready to get into a war with Germany, and they couldn't see how they could get troops out to Czechoslovakia in the heart of Europe. The French leader, Daladier, well, France did have a treaty with Czechoslovakia signed back in 1925 when France was looking for allies against Germany, but he didn't want this alliance to pull France into war at this time. They didn't really want to get into a war with Germany if they could avoid it. So Beneš didn't really get any firm promises of support from Chamberlain or Daladier. Hitler started now to get ready for an armed invasion, and he starts to make a lot of very militaristic pronouncements. In April of 1938, he flew out to see his ally Mussolini, the dictator of Italy. If you remember, they formed the Rome-Berlin axis back in 1936 after the whole Abyssinian crisis. So he flew out to see Mussolini, and Mussolini said, look, yeah, if you invade Czechoslovakia, we will support you. Italy will support you. So Hitler has some support for this now. He starts to make more aggressive pronouncements. We will smash Czechoslovakia by military action in the near future. At this stage, Chamberlain and the British government, they are worried. They do not want to see a war develop. And Chamberlain sends out this man, Lord Runciman. He sends Lord Runciman out to Czechoslovakia, and Lord Runciman is supposed to look and listen to the situation in Czechoslovakia, listen to the government, listen to the Sudeten Germans, and make a report back to the British government what he thinks the British government should do, what they should recommend, what they should support. And Lord Runciman, however, he is a German speaker, and he's quite heavily biased towards the Sudeten Germans. His report says, basically, the Sudetenland should be separated from Czechoslovakia and possibly given to Germany. the Munich Crisis develops. You'll see why it's called the Munich Crisis in a moment. So Hitler he's making these aggressive pronouncements. We are ready for war with Czechoslovakia. Hitler's generals, however, they are not quite so sure, because they're worried, what if Britain and France get involved? They don't feel the German army is ready to take on Britain and France at this stage. Hitler is very confident that Britain and France will not do anything. He's not worried about them at all. So, if you remember, this gentleman here is Konrad Henlein. He creates more and more problems, more and more violence inside Czechoslovakia. There are Nazi supporters inside his party, and they smash and burn Czech and Slovak businesses. They also target Jewish businesses. If you remember, there's a lot of Nazi supporters within them, and they stop talking to the Czechoslovak government. So the crisis is really developing. Up here, you can see this picture above Konrad Henlein is some members of the Sudeten German Free Corps. Again, if you remember the Free Corps, a right-wing paramilitary group. Chamberlain really, really wanted to avoid a war, and he saw himself as an international peacemaker who could possibly avoid a war. So he flew out to Germany on the 15th of September to a place called Bad Godesberg. He flew out to meet with Hitler on the 15th of September. When Chamberlain met Hitler, he complained that the Sudeten Germans were being very badly treated, and he couldn't stand by as a German and see fellow Germans being badly treated in Czechoslovakia. Chamberlain's response was, look, okay, he's read Lord Runciman's report and he wants to avoid a possible greater evil of war. So he says, I agree with you, Hitler. I think the Sudetenland should be annexed to Germany. He says, but look, please don't use military force. Don't invade and start a war. I will go and I'll talk to the leaders of France and Czechoslovakia, and I'll see if we can get a gradual handover of the Sudetenland to you. Okay, so don't use military force. Chamberlain then flies back to London. You really get a sense here of how anxious Chamberlain is to avoid a war and the lengths he's prepared to go to. He always seems to be hopping on and off planes during this whole crisis. So on the 18th of September, Chamberlain's in London and he invites the French Prime Minister Daladier out to London. And Chamberlain proposes to Daladier, look, I've talked to Hitler. He says he won't go to war if he can gradually obtain, there's a handover of the Sudetenland, a partition means a split, a partition of Czechoslovakia. He says, look, will you support this idea of giving the Sudetenland to Germany? And Daladier says, yes, as long as you, Britain, alongside France, we promise to defend the rest of Czechoslovakia. So Hitler can have the Sudetenland, but he's not allowed to have the rest of Czechoslovakia. And if he tries that with military force, you and I will back Czechoslovakia against Hitler. And Chamberlain agrees. Who was missing from this talk about the future of Czechoslovakia? Well, the leader himself of Czechoslovakia, Edvard Beneš. When Chamberlain and Daladier tell Beneš about the idea to give Hitler the Sudetenland, Beneš's initial response is absolutely no way. He doesn't want his country partitioned and cut in two, and the most rich industrial areas of his country to be separated, leaving a weak Czechoslovakia. And he says, no way. And by the way, these are not their actual words. These are my paraphrasing. The thing is, then Chamberlain and Daladier say this. Look, if you don't agree to this, and Hitler then invades all of Czechoslovakia, we will not support you. You'll have to fight Germany alone. If you agree to lose the Sudetenland, then we do promise we'll defend the rest of Czechoslovakia if Hitler invades. And so basically Beneš, he considers this for a couple of days, and after a couple of days he realizes he hasn't really got a choice, and he agrees. So Chamberlain flies back out to Bad Godesberg in Germany on the 22nd of September, and he says, look, I've managed to get France and Czechoslovakia to agree to a gradual handover of the Sudetenland to Germany. Hitler says, nope, I've changed my mind. I want more. It has to be an immediate handover. I want my armed forces to go in and occupy it straight away. I want there to be referendums and plebiscites in the rest of Czechoslovakia to see if they want to split from Czechoslovakia. I've changed my mind. I want a lot more stuff now. Chamberlain's asking, can we reach some sort of compromise here? Can you meet in the middle? Absolutely not, is the response from Hitler. So it's now looking as if war is likely. Gas masks, 2 million gas masks are issued in London. Anti-aircraft batteries are put up in parks in London and Paris. It really seems as if war is likely. Chamberlain doesn't give up on his hope of peace. He sends this man, Horace Wilson, out to see Hitler. And Horace Wilson warns Hitler, says, look, an attack on Czechoslovakia, it could lead you into a war with France and Britain if you attack. The response of Hitler, if France and Britain strike, let them do so. It is Tuesday today, and by next Monday we shall be at war. I am going to smash the Czechs. It seems that Hitler is determined to invade Czechoslovakia. Chamberlain is speaking to the British Parliament on the 28th of September about the whole Czechoslovak crisis when he gets a note handed to him, and the note says, we've received news from Hitler. He is willing now to meet and talk about the whole issue of Czechoslovakia. When Chamberlain reads this note out to the British Parliament, there's wild cheering and applause. People are really happy to see that what seemed like a war has been avoided. The very next day, Chamberlain flies out to Munich for a 4-power conference. If you look at this photograph, the body language is not very happy, is it? You can see Chamberlain sat on the left here. This gentleman is a representative from France, a glum-looking Hitler here and a moody-looking Mussolini to his right. Basically, at the Munich Conference, Britain and France agree to all of Hitler's demands. We agree to your terms on Czechoslovakia. You can basically take over the Sudetenland immediately as long as you make a promise you will not try to invade the rest of Czechoslovakia. You will not use military force to expand Germany anymore. Hitler agrees and he signs his name on the piece of paper saying, yeah, I'm not going to use my armed force to take any more territory. Chamberlain flies back to London holding the piece of paper that Hitler has signed saying, I won't invade any more countries. A very famous speech he makes at the airport, peace in our time. He is hailed by many people as an international hero for keeping the peace, for avoiding war. There are some people that criticize him, but there are also many that support him at this time. This is a classical example of appeasement, of giving Hitler some things he wants, perhaps the lesser evil, to avoid the greater evil of war. On the 1st of October, German armed forces moved into the Sudetenland and it was annexed. It became part of Germany. This is something that was said by General Yodel on the 30th of September. The Pact of Munich is signed. Czechoslovakia as a power is out. The genius of the Führer and his determination not to avoid the risk of world war have again won us victory without use of force. What is General Yodel saying there? The first part here is that Czechoslovakia as a power is out. This is very significant because Czechoslovakia has lost its border areas with Germany where a lot of the industry of Czechoslovakia was located. The remaining part of Czechoslovakia is much less able, it's weaker, and it would be less able in the future to resist any invasion. The second thing that Yodel is saying here is that Hitler is totally prepared to gamble. He's prepared to accept the risk of a world war to get what he wants. Whereas Britain and France, if they're faced with the prospect, with the chance of a world war, they will back down and give Hitler the things that he wants. Okay, so I hope you've made some effective notes there on the Munich Crisis.